Hello everybody, so this video is entitled Stretch Genius, the bi-monthly payout. We had an announcement, was it 30 minutes ago, a little more than 30 minutes ago, from Sailor introducing bi-monthly payouts on Stretch, a change from the monthly payout, and there's a tremendous amount of benefits in doing that. This is a really big deal. And SATA doubled down on the idea with a staggered payment, proposing to be the same but delayed by 1 week compared to Stretch, meaning that if a shareholder wanted weekly income, they could buy Stretch and SATA. If they wanted a flat yield, all they would need to do is buy something like 58% Stretch, 42% 42% SATA, 58% Stretch, and then boom, you have roughly the same yield because SATA pays 13%, Stretch pays 11.5%, and you could even have a weekly payout. But bi-monthly payout will be a huge deal, I think, for most people, because in the United States, folks in Europe may not realize that, but in the United States, bi-monthly is often the preferred mode of payment for employers. A lot of employers choose bi-monthly, choose to pay bi-monthly. That's a very common thing in the US. And so even from a marketing standpoint, because Stretch would be marketed in the USA, bi-monthly might even make more sense to people actually appealed by this product, i.e. people who don't want to have the volatility, right? Unlike most of us on this channel, I don't own Stretch. I love vol. I love volatility, but some people don't like it. These instruments are designed for them. So anyway, when is this rolling out? And by the way, this will totally pass because obviously this is a great idea, but also big shareholders, own MSTR, right? I mean, Sailor essentially controls the company via his shares and via his relationships with people who own a lot of shares. So I have no issue that this will go into effect in June. And so it's going to be bi-monthly. So instead of getting, let's say, 1% a month, roughly, you almost get 1% a month now, you would get 0.5% every 2 weeks. And there are a lot of benefits doing that. Now, before I explain the many benefits as to why they do that, you may say, why didn't you do it weekly? Well, apparently, there is this rule on the NASDAQ that says there needs to be at least a 10-day period between the ex-dividend date and the pay date. So unless you want to go and every 10-day payment and you want to have it be uneven because of the month of February, which would mess up everything, unless you want to do that, the max you could do is two times a month. Technically 3 times a month, but then it would be very messy dates. So he didn't decide to do 3 times a month. He decided to do 2 times a month. Now, this is because this is the old world, right? Ideally in crypto, if you create an instrument like Stretch on CryptoRail, ideally you would want a super micro payment, every second or something. And assuming you're on a network that charges essentially no fee, like Solana, that may make sense, right? On an older blockchain that charges quite a bit of fees, that wouldn't make sense. But theoretically, you want to get the frequency of payment as short as possible, without exaggerating. Like once a day would probably be very reasonable on crypto rails, right? But we are not on crypto rails. We are on TradFi rails. So the best he can do is every 2 weeks. And that is a very big deal. There's a lot of big deals. So let's talk about the big deals. Why is this a big deal? Let's talk about the reason. It matches the bi-monthly US payroll cycle. So a lot of people who want to live on Stretch could potentially do that, because that's what they're used to in their budgeting. Also, I want to point out a lot of the buy now, pay later systems, all of these apps, Affirm, Klarna, etc., they do bi-monthly. It's bi-monthly payments, sometimes 5 payments, bi-monthly interest free. And by interest free, they mean it's really the seller who charges, who books the interest rate as an expense. I think this could create very interesting opportunities with this BNPL platforms, where a lot of people could match actually the Stretch payout to the BNPL payment. And I think it could lead to interesting strategies in, kind of like in the life hacking world, if that makes any sense. You may remember the early days of Bitcoin in the life hack world. You had people who were buying Bitcoin via moving fungible expenses via student loans. You were people who were doing that with credit cards, with rent earning points. So in the life hack world, I think the bi-monthly payout will seem very interesting to a lot of people. Of course, the main reason why you do that is what? You want to reduce the price drawdown. You cut it in half. Of course, you cut it in half if you do 2 payouts a month as opposed to 1 payout a month. So this is a big deal. It means the volatility will be reduced. If the volatility will be reduced, that increases the volatility, that increases the liquidity, that increases the demand, and that increases the Sharpe ratio. Why the Sharpe ratio of Stretch is so high is because they have essentially no volatility or very low volatility. They're about to have twice as small volatility, right? So that's going to be a really big deal. More entry and exit opportunities for our shareholders. It's true that if you were trying to exit Stretch today or yesterday, you were down 70 cents on 100. Right, you were down 60 to 70 cents on 100. If you cut it in half, of course, that means now you'll have 2 opportunities a month to be down, say, 35 cents on 100, which is much more acceptable, right? Worst case scenario, it trades at 100, but in a worst case scenario, it may trade at $99.70 because you happen to need the money on the one day of the bi-monthly ex-dividend date, right? And so that's not as big of a deal. And that also means that Stretch will be able to recover much quicker because all of a sudden you only need to make up 30 or 35 cents whenever you go ex-dividend, as opposed to having to make up 70, 80 cents anytime you go ex-dividend. Now, faster dividend reinvestment. That is also a big deal. Faster dividend reinvestment. Now, of course, you got to go on a compound interest calculator and see the difference of the frequency. That actually makes a big deal, but that makes a big deal over very long periods of time. I don't want to make it seem like it's a big deal if you're planning to hold the instrument for like a year. But if you're trying to own the instrument for like decades plus, this actually compounds. And this extra time, you getting it early, you getting the payment early actually has an impact, but you really need to go out 20 years to see a very meaningful impact. But that counts, that matters. And then, of course, it reduces the volatility, and so therefore it increases the eligibility to low-vol indices and low-vol ETFs. Like there's a very popular low-volatility S&P 500 ETF, for example. I don't know if that'd be included in that, but there's a lot of low-volatility ETFs. And of course, Stretch has been included in a lot of ETFs. I know. Okay, I'm not too sure about it. I know the strategy preferreds are included in a PFF. If you go to the PFF iShares, now off the top of my mind, I don't know if in the PFF iShares, I don't know if they have Stretch specifically. I know they have a few of the strategy preferreds in there, though. So perhaps they have Stretch, but I just off the top of my mind, I don't recall. But I think the lower volatility, the more you're going to be included in ETFs. And of course, if you do that, you become part of a financial structure. You become more stable, less volatility, less sellers, etc. And of course, it improves the collateral utility. If you have smaller drawdowns, you have more collateral utility. And this is a very good point. If you look at SATA or Stretch, they are available at Schwab and Robinhood and Webull, all of the modern brokers. But frankly, they are not treated too favorably as far as margin goes, right? They're at a 50% maintenance ratio, but when you actually do the calculation at these brokers, you'll find that they're not treated the most favorably. Like BND or the TLT ETF, you can blow your entire margin and buy TLT, right? You can't do that on Stretch. They don't let you do that on Stretch just yet. And my guess is that Saylor wants Stretch to be so large, so stable, so low vol that people can actually use it as a pristine collateral, more pristine than it already is. I mean, it's already pretty good collateral. Like, it's better than, say, a leverage ETF, for example, which is awful collateral. But Stretch is kind of a middle-of-the-road collateral, right? It's not the S&P 500 as collateral, right? They could potentially get there. And that would be a really, really big deal. That would unlock a lot of people. A lot of people would want to buy Stretch if you had it treated as like the best collateral ever. And then lastly, absolutely love this from Matt Cole. This is absolutely a good idea because Sailor wants to go Ex-Div on the 1st and the 15th. SATA is offering to do the same thing on the 7th and the 21st, which means that if you own the combination of the two, 50-50 if you want to make it simple, more like 60-40 if you want to have a flat payment, roughly. If you want to own both, you could have a weekly payment, a weekly payout. And of course, that would even improve what we said about reinvesting earlier, increasing the compounding. If you invest weekly, that would actually also improve your compounding even further over a long period of time. So this is a really big deal if they do that too. These instruments keep getting better. Iteration after iteration, they keep getting better. And I certainly love this. So kudos to Sailor, kudos to working for us, the MSTR common shareholders. Love it very much. Anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.